Seven lies Americans believe about life in the UK. It's not that they're in love with cues. Most Americans that are watching this don't even know what the hell a cue is. Please know that everything you think that you know about Britain is completely wrong. Well, okay, not everything, but there are seven myths Americans like to spread as if they're gospel about British culture, and I'm here to debunk every single one of them. Number one, everyone drinks tea all day long. Okay, so the reality is this is kind of true. There is a lot of tea drinking that happens here in the UK by far, and there are those who drink many, many cups of tea a day, but there's also a bunch of British people that actually don't drink tea at all, and some who would prefer coffee. I know it's kind of weird and unusual from an American's point of view. They also drink these juices. They're kind of like flavored water. They're called squash and ribena, and they're like unconcentrated juices that you pour into a glass of water. A lot of people drink stuff like that as well. The whole tea thing here isn't necessarily about the fact that they drink it so much. It's that it's more of a lifestyle and a habit for them. It's more about the ritual and the taking time to just think things through a little bit and just taking time to relax and reflect. So it's not that the tea culture isn't prevalent here. It's just that it's not everybody. It's not just tea and it's not all day long. Myth number two, Brits love cues. If you're American, means lines, waiting in line, basically. It's not really that they love cues. It's that British people are extremely polite and very aware of public spaces. The queuing thing is part of all of that. It's basically, why are you not waiting your turn? Why do you think you're special? Why do you think that you get to go first when we've already been waiting online? It's more about them just being organized and polite. Politeness, I think, is more something that British people love and is in their DNA, more so than cues. They don't necessarily enjoy it. It's not something that they're super gung-ho and hyped about or anything. It's just that you queue, wait in line, and you don't try to cut the line. And if you do, you are very apologetic and aware of it, and you make your way back to the back of the line immediately. You will get called out on this, and it won't be fun. Myth number three, it's constantly raining. Yes, it rains a lot more than it did in New Jersey, but it's not really apocalyptic rain. So in New Jersey, we used to have a lot of severe weather patterns, right? It would rain and it would rain for 3 days and it'd be very heavy, soaking, flooding kind of rain. And then it would be really sunny and hot for 3 days. And then it might rain again for another day or two. Here in the UK, the weather patterns change so rapidly, pretty much throughout the day. Like the morning is going to be different from lunchtime, is going to be different from afternoon and evening commutes. But because it changes so quickly, it's usually not really heavy rain. There are periods of heavy rain, especially now in the we're going into a wetter season in the fall/autumn and going into the winter season. But most of the time, I think it's that like steady kind of damp feeling. That's why I think people think it always rains here in the UK. It's usually just gentle drizzle. It's never ever a perpetual flood, which is much more common where I'm from in the US. Number four, all houses look like castles. This was one that even before I met my partner, I never really understood because like there's no possible way everyone could live in an estate home or a castle, right? And American homes are huge compared to the average equivalent here in the UK. So I never really understood why they always seem to think that's what they looked like. You get a big house in America, it's the dream house. You get the big manicured lawn with the extra bedrooms and fireplaces and dining rooms that you don't even use. The reality in the UK is homes are much smaller. Maybe you get a closet, and maybe you get a small patch of grass. But they call it a garden because it kind of is only big enough to be honest. But they're not castles, guys. They do have the where I am anyway, most of them are Victorian looking and definitely something out of like Mary Poppins look, but you're never going to get the square footage that you get in the US. by any means. You're going to be very lucky to have a yard. Really, people just make the most of the space that they have. Even though it is tiny, you do get a sense that you're in kind of a medieval, mythical kind of story. And I know that's like an ideological idea of from an American point of view, but I can't help it. But the good thing about living here is even though your homes may be a little bit tinier, there are castles and estate homes everywhere. Absolutely go and explore to your heart's content. Just don't expect to live in one. Myth number 5. Everyone drives on the left and it's impossible. Okay. This one, I have to admit, completely intimidated me for a really long time, especially because the first time I tried driving, like officially, when we first moved here, I sideswiped a brick wall and it definitely damaged our bumper and everything. I was completely mortified and I was very disenfranchised with driving after that for a long time. And it still does intimidate me a bit, but it is manageable. I get the scariness of roundabouts. I get the scariness of trying to parallel park. Trust me, I failed it in my US driving test. Once you get the hang of it, like once you get over that initial obstacle, it's an easier adjustment than a lot of Americans realize. The real challenge for me is the narrow country roads, pedestrians who will glare at you if you're not polite and wave back, and definitely trying to find parking where you're not going to hit any cars or the curb or hold up traffic for longer than a few minutes. Those seem to be my weaknesses. Those are more intimidating to me than actually driving on the left side of the road. Life is cheap. This is a little bit about perspective, and I'm not going to lie to you guys because in my experience, it is much cheaper to live here in the UK overall as far as cost of living is concerned. As far as food, as far as clothing, as far as things to do, all of that is much, much cheaper than the cost of living in the US. Of course, the housing is a huge exception because there's spaces at a premium. And if you want space, you're going to pay for it. That's what it's like living on an island. And it is a little bit unnerving for me as an American, especially because I'm quite cheap just overall. But I just deal with it because the trade-off for me is free healthcare, decent public transport, better work-life balance, and the American dream that I was not able to find when I was living in the US. So sometimes you pay a little bit more, but you live a little bit better. So for me, it works. But to say that life in the UK is cheap or not rich, I just don't see it. It's full of culture and it's so rich and ripe with activities and history. There's always something to do. So cheap is, I guess, a frame of mind. I guess that's where we land on this one. Myth number 7. All Brits are polite, sweet, and proper. Yes, it is true that British people are very polite. They like to smile, they will queue, and they will definitely apologize to you if they run into you or if they feel they've slighted you in any way, even if it was your fault. But you have to remember the key thing about British culture overall. Sarcasm runs much deeper than the Thames does. Ask a Brit for directions. Of course, they will help you along, but they will probably make some kind of underhanded remark about you being some silly American who doesn't know where they're going. Or something about like no Americans or tourists know what to do outside of London, that kind of thing. I've heard that before as well. Take it in stride. They don't really mean it. Trust me, if they're insulting you, you're gonna know they're insulting you. The British sarcasm and the British humor, I feel, are quintessential British culture, and I absolutely adore it as an American living here. And I've even come to convey a turn of phrase or two in my time living here. So, British people are polite and sweet and proper, but usually if they're polite and sweet and proper, they either don't know you or they don't like you. When they start being unpolite, not as sweet, and not as proper, that's when you know you've made a real connection. Overall, the truth about living in the UK is really a balance between disappointment and utter freaking delight. The coffee is definitely not as strong as some of the coffees that we get in the US, although some British people will definitely argue with me about that. The food portions are tiny by comparison, and the weather is definitely much more unpredictable, but for some reason, I just wouldn't trade it for the world. I love living here in the UK despite all of these things that I've had to adjust in my mindset and all of these myths I had to overcome while living here. Some Americans just love romanticizing Great Britain, but the truth is it's smaller, it's a bit slower, and it's definitely quieter than you would ever imagine. But guess what? That's exactly why life works so much better here. So, curious about what you all think of any of these. If you're a native British person, what's an American myth about your country that drives you absolutely crazy? And if you're an American watching this, what's one thing about the UK that you wish was true and maybe you found out wasn't? And subscribe if you want some more reality checks about what it's really like living here in the UK. Catch you guys in the next one.